this next Joey Jeff's backyard, it's going to be unbelievable. You know how I'm always ranting about aircraft noise and leaf blower noise, right? I have another passion that's equally intense, light pollution. So you can check my rants in the prior episodes, but this one is only about light pollution. It's a lecture at RCC, sponsored by the Rockland Astronomy Club. It's many Fridays during the fall and spring semester at RCC. I think you'll find it very enjoyable. Here we go. We're starting now. A little bit of this organization. There's Keith. Keith's going to speak. Okay. My raw. I'm gonna give my raw.
Okay, I think I'll start now. My name is Keith Murdoch, and I am one of the two coordinators of the Rockland Astronomy Club lecture series in partnership with Professor Safai and all of the physics students who we're glad to see show up here. So this is our second lecture of the fall term, and we will be talking about light pollution and dark skies. But before I get into that, I'd like to just say a few brief words about a member of ours who just passed within the last month, and we're heartbroken. How many in here from the Rockland Astronomy Club don't know who Al Nagle is? That's what I thought. Okay, everybody knew Al. Al is the founder and was the chief technology officer for many years of TeleVue Optics, and he also, before he founded TeleVue Optics, worked with NASA in the Gemini and Apollo projects. He built a lunar module simulator which showed what space and the lunar surface was going to look like from the porthole of the lunar module. Essentially, it was a giant eyepiece that was about 36 inches across and had 120, I believe, degree field of view. And that was where he later designed his amateur astronomy eyepieces. Al, however, was one of the longest-term members of the Rockland Astronomy Club and a mentor to all of us for the various enterprises that we've engaged in. Everybody knew Al. Everybody loved Al. By his own admission, he was a kid who never grew up because he had this boundless enthusiasm about amateur astronomy and about optics and about the astronomy community. Somebody had once interviewed him a number of years ago and said, well, you could have stuck with NASA and been pulling in a real sizable paycheck. And his answer was typical. He says, I couldn't do that. I love amateur astronomy way too much. So he founded his own company, and they grew into not the largest amateur astronomy company out there, but probably one of the best recognized and respected. And so he'd been on the board of directors of Rockland Astronomy Club probably for multiple decades, since before I showed up around 2000 or so. And anyway, he had so many friends and so many people who truly appreciated his company. He was here last month for the lecture that we had, and after the lecture was over, he brought out his image intensifying eyepiece and was willing to show everybody the heavens. Even in our light polluted sky here, you could see all kinds of details in his image intensifying eyepiece you just can't see otherwise. And it's the generosity of spirit of the man was just absolutely amazing. And I considered him a personal friend, and we all miss him terribly. So, that being said, let me go on and talk to you about what we're about to do tonight. If anybody looks up from the sky, do you wonder why the sky looks kind of orange, especially over near the Nanuet Mall area and the Nyack Mall? Does anybody remember the last time? Okay, anybody who can remember seeing the Milky Way from this end of Rockland County, please raise your hands. This end of Rockland County. Okay, not Anthony Wayne, but okay, Joe, how long ago could you see the Milky Way?
I can still see it,
Okay,
just barely.
just barely.
Yeah.
And you're in one of the darker
Yeah,
suburban
I'm
neighborhoods,
I'm in a very dark area,
except for your neighbors.
except for my neighbors.
Yes,
Yeah.
okay. But most places, there's no way you can see the Milky Way, and you can probably see hundreds of stars instead of thousands that you can see in a dark sky location. It's hard to make out the shapes of some of the constellations. And you can usually see the North Star, but you may not be able to identify it as the North Star. So you can't even use the heavens nearly as properly as a compass. Anyway, our history has been tied up with the night sky for a long time, both spiritually and as far as setting the times that we learn when to plant our crops and when to harvest them, and a lot of science that we've learned by being able to see the night sky and figure out what's going on up there. And we are in danger of losing that right now. So Steve here is a representative of the New Jersey chapter of the International Dark Sky Association. And he's also a member of Rockland Astronomy Club, which is all cool people are a member of Rockland Astronomy Club. So we're very happy to have Steve here. As I said, a delegate of Dark Sky International, which Rockland Astronomy Club is also a member of, and we donate to. He's an educator about light pollution and its environmental, astronomical, and human health impacts. So light pollution disrupts ecosystems, obscures the night sky, and harms human health. That's something probably a lot of you didn't know. Steve will tell us about efforts to reverse light pollution through responsible lighting practices and how to advocate for policies that reduce light pollution and give us the ability to have dark skies much closer to our homes. Steve will also talk about the physics of light dispersion and how light pollution affects what parts of the spectrum we can see. There are a lot of aspects of how we perceive light that tie directly into the light pollution. So Steve has received a master's in public health degree from Rutgers School of Public Health, and that is how he led to being an advocate for dark skies. And he is not an amateur astronomer yet. Well, I guess you are an amateur astronomer, and we're bringing you up to speed as fast as we can. So most of us come by dark sky advocacy through astronomy. He's doing it the other way around. Anyway, we're really happy to have you, Steve. So take it away.
Thank you so much for having me. So yes, Steve Maricondo. I live over near Hackensack, Saddlebrook, Bergen County, where of course we have even worse light pollution than here. So, but yeah, and yeah, I've been into astronomy for a couple of years, but getting more into like, I got to get a good scope. I'm mostly a binocular and naked eye observer, but yeah, there's many different aspects of light pollution that people don't usually think about, the way it affects human health, indoor lighting, and also its environmental impacts. So we're going to go through all of that. And I'll do my best with the physics as a public health major. So. And this wonderful quote from Martin Luther King Jr., "Only in the darkness can you see the stars." And I may ask, I know there's not everyone has a microphone, but does anyone want to share a story of like a really dark sky that they've been to? Maybe like 2 people. I'll start with you, yeah.
One time when I was in Maine, it was the absolute most beautiful thing I've ever seen. I was hiking a cottage.
Yes.
And there were no lights anywhere. Like, it was very remote. And I remember I got out of my tent to go to the bathroom. I looked up at the sky, and it was just nothing but stars.
Yes.
And I've never seen anything like it in my life. It was great.
That's great. And I'll repeat for people who didn't hear, he was hiking at Mount Katahdin, an Appalachian Trail up in Baxter State Park in Maine. And that is actually the area where it's like the darkest skies on the East Coast. So yeah, he witnessed the best of the East Coast in terms of lack of light pollution. Anyone else want to share one more maybe? Yeah, sure.
Okay, so back 20 years ago, I went to the Big Island of Hawaii and went to the summit of Mauna Kea with my good friend Mies here, and we found out that you could observe from these switchbacks that were about 11 or 12,000 feet above sea level, and so what was amazing about being up there was there were a lot of faint deep sky objects that you usually use a telescope to see, and you could see them with binoculars or even the naked eye. And there was so much light from the stars themselves that you didn't need your headlights to see what you were doing. You could almost see shadows from the stars, except this light was very, very diffuse. But the constellations were so rich in stars that you got lost. You had trouble identifying the actual shape of the constellations because you were overwhelmed with the amount of information that you saw. And it just felt like a spiritual moment for me that I was that connected to the night sky and that I really felt a part of it. And I don't know if I've gotten that experience to that degree anywhere else. And I highly encourage anybody who really has the travel bug to at some point go out to Mauna Kea and see how high you can get off of how high you're going to get.
Yeah, Mauna Kea, one of the best places. And I'll get one more. It was another student that raised their hand, so I want to give them an opportunity. Yeah.
I think it must have been middle of January last year. Like I think negative 15 degrees for the wind chill.
Oh, yeah.
I was out on the particular stroll. And what was so brilliant about it was that the lake was like sheen. It was like sheen clouds. So you could see the entire heavens reflected on the lake. So it was so solid. But what was brilliant too was that it was a full moon. And it was one of those full moons that like when your eyes are properly adjusted to light sensitivity, it was so bright that it was casting shadows at night. And it was similar to what you said, where like there was just so much raw light emitted in the cosmos that you could actually just see. You didn't need a flashlight if you were probably articulating it. And I would say that was one of my more memorable experiences.
Thanks
Thank you.
for sharing.
Thank you.
And yeah, the full moon is so bright that in fact, yeah, you don't need a flashlight in most circumstances. So very cool. All right, I love those experiences. I'll go into a little history here. I'll talk about Dark Sky International was actually founded in the 1980s. They're based in Tucson, Arizona. They're like the primary force tackling light pollution worldwide, educated. And we formed there's chapters all around the world now, and we formed the New Jersey chapter back in 2023. And we're actually a partnership with the Sierra Club because they have their own light pollution committee. So we kind of joined forces there, and that ended up being very beneficial in terms of spreading the word about light pollution. And a major theme of this presentation will be collaborations with other organizations that are not just astronomy based, it's the environmental organizations, health organizations, because that's really how we get the word out there. So yeah, as just an example of some coalition building we're doing in New Jersey. This can really be done in any state, and I'm going to help New York get a chapter up and running for Dark Sky International. We even have some legislation on the books in terms of regulating lighting, but we'll get to the basics here. What exactly is light pollution? I define it as excessive, misdirected, and obstructive artificial light that washes away the night sky, but also impacts ecosystems and human health. It's essentially wasted light, like using more lighting than you need, using lighting that goes everywhere instead of targeted to where you need it. So it has all these like externalities, external effects that are negative. And 4 types being circadian rhythm disrupting light, that's for both humans and wildlife, glare, light trespass, and sky glow. In terms of human health, I did my thesis for my master's degree on the effect of artificial light at night and human health. Because basically, if you have, our brains adapted to natural bright days and dark nights. Like the brightest nights we would ever have are a full moon night. So technically any light that's brighter than that, if we're exposed to that, especially late into the night, there's evidence that it has human health effects in terms of messing with our sleep and our circadian rhythms. I'm going to go a little more into detail about that in a bit. But so you've got circadian rhythm disrupting light. glare, which is basically unshielded light that shines directly in your eyes, and this can impact your vision at night in terms of, driving and things like that. You might notice that the headlights on newer vehicles are much brighter than they used to be, and this actually has some impacts on people, not just people with visual impairments. Light trespass. This is stray light from maybe a street light outside your house that shines directly into your, into your bedroom window to disrupt your sleep. So that's one aspect of light pollution. And sky glow, which is, has been known about by astronomers for a long time. It's essentially that wasted light that's going above the horizontal plane up into the night sky washes away our view of the stars. And wastes energy too, because all that, it's basically all excessive photons that we don't need to be thrown up into the sky. And this little image here just basically demonstrates that. You have your useful light, which is that, that margin that you actually need, where you need the light there. And then you have backlight, which can be light trespass and glare. And then above that horizontal plane you'll see there is our sky glow. So this happens from using light fixtures that are not fully shielded, such as this fixture right here. I'll be talking a lot about that. But what are the consequences of light pollution? Why care about light pollution? It's more than just astronomy. Like I said, it affects human health, your neighbors, animals, birds, our wallets, and the planet. Talking about human health, American Medical Association has published multiple reports about the effects of LED lighting, but mainly just lighting that is excessively bluish white in a similar way to the midday sun. There's evidence that there's sleep disruption impacts, even an increased risk of certain types of hormonal cancers like breast cancer and prostate cancer among like night shift workers and things like that. So, and the main mechanism behind this is the disruption of melatonin in the brain. So melatonin is the primary sleep hormone, and actually all mammals produce melatonin in the presence of darkness. Because during the day, we get exposed to light, there are certain cells in our eye called intrinsically photosensitive ganglion cells, which send signals to our brain, to our hypothalamus, as to whether it's day or night, basically. So when you're exposed to daylight, it tells your brain to stop producing melatonin and be more active. And then at nighttime, it's the reverse. When you have that lack of light exposure, your brain starts producing melatonin. And melatonin is not just, it helps initiate, the sleep, the relaxing and the sleep cycle, but it also is an antioxidant and works to help your immune system. So yes, this lack of, if we're exposed to bright lights all the time at night, playing video games at 3 in the morning or whatever, we won't be getting that natural level of melatonin that we normally have, and this is associated with different types of health issues. And this also is for animals and wild. I'll get more into how it affects wildlife, but more studies, of course, are coming out about this. So, and this is basically that mechanism that I described. There's because basically the natural day-night cycle is what has entrained the circadian rhythms of all living things on Earth. Like these are patterns that are set with nocturnal species, diurnal species, crepuscular species, which come out at twilight. So this excessive exposure to artificial light, which only really happened about 150 years ago, has altered the behavior and biology of living things on Earth. A little bit more about glare. Can anyone find the guy who's hiding? Yeah. Yeah, you might see it like a little faint object back there. Right? Yeah. Why do you think you can't see him that well? Yeah, the glare from the light, right? Now, admittedly, cameras have greater optical range, so it's not exactly, I don't want to be misleading, but really the human eye works in a similar way. Whereas if you just block the glare exposure that's going into your eye, your pupils can adjust, your pupils dilate, and you're able to see better. So basically this goes against the notion that more lighting is always better. Like something you might hear a lot from law enforcement and stuff. Like we just need more lights, all the crime will go away. But if that light is blinding you and causing your pupils to constrict, it's not really helping you, is it? So the solution is well-designed lighting. We still need lighting, obviously, but just we need to be smart about it. And also feel free to ask questions throughout it. I know you don't have microphones, but if you have, yeah.
I actually wanted to ask more about melatonin production and how it relates to like darkness. How do, like, for example, nocturnal animals produce hormone melatonin when they sleep during
So
the day?
all mammals actually produce melatonin in darkness, regardless of whether they're nocturnal or not. That's a great question. But just in diurnal animals, the melatonin is associated with getting ready to go to sleep and stuff. But that melatonin also has, like, it might even play the opposite role in nocturnal mammals. But yes, but the key thing that among all the different species of mammals, it does have immune system effects in all mammals.
Okay.
Yes.
Wait, didn't mammals, all modern mammals evolve from common nocturnal ancestor during Jurassic that lived at nighttime?
Yes.
So that's how we evolved eyesight to see at nighttime compared to like reptiles.
Yes. But yeah, and some mammals have better eyesight than others. And yeah, that's a great point. He asked if all living mammals descended from a common ancestor that was a nocturnal, like basically like a nocturnal rodent during the Jurassic period.
The Mesozoic.
Mesozoic, yeah, which is correct, yeah. So, but yeah. So melatonin has different. It does have different functions though for different creatures.
And I don't know how much you know about, like, how in depth you know with circadian rhythm disorders, but circadian rhythm disorders run in my family, where they run more on like a 28-hour clock rather than a 24-hour clock. Do you know why that may be? Is that just like a glitch in like the DNA, or would that be more like?
Yeah.
Okay.
Without getting too much into it, I'm not super expert on this, but there are genetic components to people's circadian rhythms. But light is like a guiding point for our circadian rhythms. Like there's studies that show when people are not exposed to light for multiple days, their sleep patterns go completely out of whack, or it'll drift by 2 hours, and then all of a sudden they're up in the middle of the night instead of during the day. So yeah, I'm gonna get. Maybe we'll save the question and answer at the end. But these are all great questions. Just because I gotta get through these slides, but really good questions. All right. So environmental and ecological impacts. There hasn't been a species studied so far that is not in some way negatively impacted by light exposure. Like frogs, and so there's behavioral changes and there's other biological changes that occur. Like frogs and toads ribbit less, which impacts their mating cycles. Salamanders come out later than normal, interrupting their foraging times, and therefore eating less. Sometimes bats will not go out and do their regular foraging behavior when there's lights present. This has been studied in certain cities. There's an increased, actually this thing's like increases in mosquito population from keeping bats away. And firefly mating patterns. So there's a lot to go into there. Birds, I was talking about allying with the Audubon Society because artificial light has a huge negative impact on birds. In many cities, you can actually find the birds will collide with buildings because they get kind of distracted by the light especially during migration season. For instance, the New York City, right? In September, when we put the lights up for the World Trade Center, that's during peak fall migration, and we're right in the middle of the North Atlantic flyway. So the birds will get caught in those lights, get exhausted, crash into buildings. They do turn off those lights every once in a while now because of advocates talking about the issue with birds. And there is some legislation that's pending in New York State to try to address this. Just better design for the windows to make them less reflective, but also turning off unnecessary lights and shielding the lights so it doesn't distract the birds. And that's just another map of the flyway there. Marine life, things you might not think about, like zooplankton will not come up when there's too much light exposure on like the ocean surface itself. Like zooplankton won't come up and eat the algae like they normally would, which leads to an increased risk of algal blooms. Changing the behavior patterns of salmon. There's more and more literature coming out every year about the impacts in terms of ecology. So you can actually say that the light, in a way, is actually a pollutant. Like it actually, in the same way that like excessive noise impacts like human health and wildlife health. It's the same with artificial light. You might have heard of sea turtles. They're kind of a poster child for light pollution issues here, because basically sea turtles, the mom sea turtle will come back to the beach in which she laid her eggs, and their evolutionary instinct when they hatch is to go towards the ocean because that's actually brighter. It reflects sunlight, reflects moonlight and starlight. But now we have our shore towns are much brighter than the starlight and the moonlight, so they end up going towards traffic. So, but towns from North Carolina down to Florida have actually changed. They're aware of this. They've actually changed their lighting to be more to shine not towards the beach and to be a warmer color temperature, which is less disruptive to turtles. And there has been some improvements there. But just a very concrete example of how too much light in a shore town can very negatively impact sea turtles. Insects, I'm sure you've all seen bugs flying around lights. Not because they actually want to. A pretty great study came out recently, like really solidifying why the behavior occurs. It's actually because, again, evolutionarily, flying insects would normally have the moon at their back, and it's stationary, right, since it's so far away. So, but with these artificial lights, they basically think it's the moon, and the bugs will fly around with their back to the light and get exhausted, and of course, not complete their mating, not complete their nocturnal pollination. Moths are the largest group of nocturnal pollinators. A lot of people don't think about plants being pollinated at night, but it is a major stabilizing factor in the ecosystem. So and fireflies, of course, they literally use their own bioluminescence to communicate and have successful mating patterns. So artificial light is leading to a large decline in them, along with, of course, insecticides and other things. So, but it's a factor that we have a lot of control over. Demonstration there. So if you want less bugs flying around your house too, you can also have your lights off or have it only on when you need it. And plants, yes, plants. Of course, leaves have photosensitive cells in them, for photosynthesis during the day, but also for telling the seasons. So like when you have a street light shining on a tree during the fall, when the leaves are supposed to fall, that actually will stay on and end up having frost issues. And then vice versa in the spring, trees will bud early when they're next to a street light, leading to frost exposure. But it's not just trees. In general, plants have circadian rhythms just like animals. So, and there's studies that have shown that plants need obviously bright sunlight during the day, but they actually need that rest period at night. They need darkness at night to reset their metabolism. And energy waste, the more obvious impact of light pollution. Just all that light shining up into the sky or being brighter than needed. It's estimated by Dark Sky International that $3.3 billion wasted, which equates to about 21 million tons of CO2 being burned per year. I still want to get their metrics on how they came to this, but yeah, it's not an insubstantial amount of energy waste. A little bit more about sky glow. And I will get to some of the physics of it. But basically, you can see from outer space, you can see from those satellites that are going around, the BERS satellites, just a lot of wasted energy there. It might look pretty, but we can use shielded lighting so that the lighting is not wasted going into outer space and washing away the night sky. The East Coast, we're a little bit bright, but as he was talking about in Maine, Maine has the darkest skies on the East Coast. And we got some little splotches there. The Rockland Astronomy Club area in the Catskills is pretty good. And out west, of course, still pretty good. But it is growing by 2% every year. Some studies have estimated that light pollution is growing by 10% every year with the adoption of brighter LED lighting. And LEDs are not inherently bad, but you have to make sure it's aimed properly and you're using the right type of light, which I will get into. And only about 2 out of 10 people on Earth can actually see the Milky Way clearly from where they live. And for those who have not seen the Milky Way, it is something like that. Of course, that's with a high exposure camera, but yeah, you can actually see the core of the Milky Way through the summer months with your naked eye. So it's something that most people can't see much anymore. But if you go up to the Catskills, you can see it. Just the story of the LA earthquake in 1994 that knocked out the grid. People went out, it was like 2 in the morning, and people went out and they saw the Milky Way and these stars like for the first time. People were freaking out. They were calling the cops. They called the Griffith Observatory, just asking like, what is this? Is it aliens? But the astronomers there were saying, no, that's just the Milky Way. Like that's the night sky. It's the way it's always been. But so many people had never seen it in their lives. So we're like, as Keith said, we're like losing that connection to the night sky. It's more than just astronomy. It's just like that connection to knowing that you're part of a universe. Like we're not just this enclosed system on Earth. Like we're part of something much bigger. And just not being able to see that with the naked eye really, it is a loss. So. But it's something we can bring back easily. It's not all doom and gloom. Just like the 2003 Northeast blackout. I don't know if you guys remember that? But this picture is like a before and after. Just like look at that difference there. Not saying we want to cause any blackouts or anything, but we can actually have our cake and eat it too by just using lighting that shines downward where it needs to be. So we can have our night sky and our lit streets. Just an image of the famous constellation of Orion at a dark sky site versus a inner city sky. All right, a little bit of physics. So the main, in terms of lighting distribution is basically the angle and coverage of a light fixture, like where the light actually goes from the fixture. And the main reason why sky glow is so prominent is because most light fixtures that we use are like non-cutoff. So the glass is like fully exposed on the side, and usually so that there's like tons of light going at the horizontal plane. But then also a lot of that light is diagonally going up into the night sky. It's like an uncontrolled light source. It's going in all directions. Most people will call this floodlights. But by simply having the glass itself be flush with the light fixture, that's called a fully shielded light fixture. But by keeping it so the bulb does not pop down below this, it keeps all light below the horizontal plane, or 90 degrees from the nadir they call it, which is the floor. So by fully shielding the fixture and then making sure it's not aimed sideways, you can still get good light coverage over a surface. Like the higher the fixture is mounted, you get that coverage, but it stays below the horizontal plane. So that's like the main way that we solve the sky glow problem, by using these kind of fixtures, which are becoming more commonplace, but they're still not used enough. So that's a little bit about lighting distribution. And yes. And then color spectrum. So the other aspect of light pollution. Oh wait, before I do that, sorry, I should mention too that by using fully shielded fixtures, it not only keeps the light from going into the night sky, it also reduces glare, because that main glare factor is having all that excessive light at that angle. But by using this, and especially when you're above the fixture itself, you get much less glare into your eye, which improves your visual acuity. And then color spectrum of light. They used to call it, they still do call it Kelvin, but it's not really Kelvin anymore, because if you guys know about the heating of a black body object, which is like a hot iron, when you heat it up, it turns red, then it turns orange, yellow. It follows that pattern. And it's the same with stars, right? The hotter the star, the bluer it is. So, but basically, the reason why light pollution is caused more by blue, like lighting that is rich in blue light. Does anyone want to take a guess as to why that is? Yes.
There's I was gonna say that when you're on computer, sometimes it would say turn on night shift mode.
Yes.
Where it makes the screen orange.
Yeah, it limits the blue spectrum and puts more red out. Yes. Yeah, you want to take a crack at it? Good guess, good guess. It's mainly, so think about in daytime, right? What color is the sky? It's blue. Anyone know why the sky is blue during the day?
Because of the frost turn off of the atmosphere.
Yeah, the atmosphere scatters blue light. The shorter the wavelength of the light, the more it scatters. So blue is at the end of that visual light spectrum, and our eyes are the most sensitive to blue. if there were more violet light in the sun and our eyes were more sensitive to violet, the sky would be purple. But there's actually, it mostly is scattering much more blue than purple, yes, or violet.
Would it also affect eye dilation as well and how much light we take in? Or does the blue light will?
Yes, our eyes are just very sensitive to blue in general. I mean, during the day, I mean, our peak visual acuity is in the green spectrum, but in terms of for circadian rhythms, actually, blue is the most sensitive, because like that blue sky hue from the environment actually will suppress melatonin and wakes us up. So in terms of our circadian rhythm disruption, we want to stay towards that warmer side of the spectrum, more like yellow, orange, taking out that blue. But in terms of sky glow, yes, that when you have an LED light fixture that has a high blue spectrum, a high blue peak, as you can see here, like incandescent light bulbs had much less of that blue spectrum. In fact, they emitted a lot in the infrared. So some people would say it's wasted energy, but the spectrum of incandescent was smoother and there was less of that blue spike. While with LEDs, in fact, with most LEDs now, you're using blue LED from the beginning, and then you use a phosphor coating to change up, to basically cover up that spectrum so that different colors are emitted. Yes?
Last question. A lot of the street light, the LED street lights were cheaply made and their coatings have been falling off with the purple lights.
Yes.
refracting.
That's why we have purple lights. He was bringing up the fact that there's some cheaper LEDs that have been used, and you might have noticed them turn purple. And it's because the phosphor actually like faded off. It was not well done. So then the blue and the red come through, and the yellow is not there.
Is that why fluorescent lights hurt eyes so much, because of the spectrum of light?
Well, fluorescent lighting, it's the spectrum, and also there's flicker too. Some people are very sensitive to the flicker of lighting, so the fluorescents are known for that. Certain types of fluorescents. I don't want to get too into the weeds here, but yes, you're correct. Some people are more sensitive to blue light than others, but the general concept is that the blue light is more impactful. I mean, during the day we actually need blue light. They say to get outside to have your serotonin levels peak and your energy levels, because we need that during the day, but then at night it's the exact opposite. That'll just keep us awake. So most American Medical Association is recommending a color temperature of 3,000 or lower, or 2,700 Kelvin, which is like your standard incandescent bulbs. But yes, and also by using warmer colored lighting at night, there's less light scatter, so because the atmosphere scatters blue light. So, any questions on that? I'm going to go a little bit into some solutions because I've been focusing on the negatives. Now the positives. We can make a difference simply using better lighting design and practices, and also policies. Municipal policy, state policy, federal policy actually plays a role here in reducing light pollution by following the 5 principles of responsible outdoor lighting. Pretty common sense, straightforward. First is making sure the light is useful in the first place. I would argue that the primary use of lighting is for wayfinding, to make sure that we can see where we're going so we don't trip over things. Of course, there's decorative lighting around the holidays. Keep it to a couple months, right, or 1 or 2 months, and early on in the night, and that's just fine. But in general, we want to be using lighting where it's actually useful. Next is making sure your lighting is targeted. Using fully shielded light fixtures to make sure the light is targeted exactly where you need it and not spraying all over the place. Making sure our light is low level. So, only using the amount of light that you need. You'd be surprised at how your eyes could adapt, especially when you reduce that glare factor by using fully shielded fixtures. Making sure your lighting is controlled. So your light is on only when you need it. So, nowadays motion sensor lighting is much cheaper than it used to be. And you, of course, just have a light switch in your wall so you can have it on when you need to go out somewhere, come back, and turn the light off. As simple as that. And warm colored. So as I was talking about before, using lighting that, it can still be like warm white light, but it has less of that blue spectrum component in there. Just a simple retrofit here that occurred in this parking garage. You can see by using fully shielded fixtures, you don't get that glare. And the fixtures are posted high enough where you still have good enough light coverage on your parking lot, so it really is a win-win. And just typical examples of your unshielded, partially shielded, and fully shielded light fixtures. The unshielded fixtures weren't too bad back in the day when we had gas lamps, But now with those really bright LEDs, it's pretty over the top. Partially shielded fixtures, our shielded, that's like the most standard fixture you get at Home Depot. And you might be blocking some of that light that goes straight up, but the problem is that most light pollution occurs from diagonal light. So when you have that glass still visible on the side, a lot of light is going diagonally, and it can still cause glare if it's too bright. So the gold standard is using fully shielded light fixtures. Dark Sky International has an approved fixture program where they actually will put a seal of approval on a Dark Sky certified light fixture like this one from Home Depot. I mean, you can get them, there's probably more availability online, but yes, and the more that people are aware of this, the more people demand these types of products, the more available it will be. And just another demonstration there of the color spectrum. And when you go buy a light bulb anywhere, it'll actually tell you the correlated color temperature. Usually, anywhere from I've seen 2000 available, which is what I use at my house. And if it says daylight, 5000 Kelvin, don't use that. Maybe use it during the day in your office or wherever you want to wake yourself up, but just not at night. I mean, and nowadays too, you can even get recessed integrated LEDs in your ceiling. You can actually change the color temperature with the day. You can have it at a higher Kelvin during the day, and then dial it down to 2700 at night. Just another visual demonstration there of worst to best. That's my light fixture at my house. That's what it looks like when it's on. It's a 2000 Kelvin GE, not trying to do advertising, but yeah, they have vintage light bulbs, which are LEDs. We're not really using incandescents anymore, but you can get that warmer color tone and save energy. The LEDs are more efficient than incandescents. As you can see from the horizontal plane, there's no light spill into the sky, and still adequately illuminates my property, so you don't need to use a floodlight. In most circumstances, you don't need to use floodlights. You can always get post-top lights and extend the illumination on your property without having to blast light all the way. Like I said, you can find these fixtures in many places. Dark Sky International, on their website, they have an entire list of all of their approved luminaires for commercial use, residential, street lights. Very useful resource. And just a little bit about coalition building and spreading the word to actually have an impact and reduce light pollution. Dark Sky New Jersey has been, we found what's really working is just teaming up with other environmental organizations. Like I'm a member of Sierra Club, I'm a member of Audubon. They're like natural allies because light pollution impacts so many different aspects of the ecosystem, human health, astronomy. So why not team up? You can have more of an impact that way. Some of our tabling events we've done. That was actually at the Northeast Astronomy Forum in the top right, our speaker, Jim Webster. So we're forming good relationships with Rockland Astronomy Club. They can be a key driver of reducing light pollution in New York. And just some real life examples of some retrofits that occurred are one of our members in Hopewell Borough, New Jersey, formed like a little group of like retired electricians and engineers and went around to shopping centers and for cheap offered to replace their fixtures. Because usually it's cost that will like, I don't know if I want to spend money, I just got these light fixtures, but if you offer to do it for cheap, you can look at that difference there. It's not just in terms of reducing light pollution, just the aesthetics are better too, you're not getting blinded. So, a little more about Hopewell. And this is where policy comes in too. So, these are some examples of some municipalities in New Jersey that have implemented light pollution ordinances, which essentially are, you can set up rules in a municipality to like where all new development has to use fully shielded light fixtures. You can do it for residential too. That's usually later on down the line when people are more aware of the issue. But in Dark Sky New Jersey actually created a model lighting ordinance template for all municipalities to use. Dark Sky International also has a version. So you could like go to your town council or your environmental commission, if your town has one, and advocate for these types of ordinances. They're pretty common sense. It's really effective for new development, and for retroactive enforcement is a little bit harder, but that's where you can do things like go around and if you have the expertise and you can help convince shop owners to replace their fixtures. And you can also have laws about basically lighting curfews, where it's like you don't have to require businesses to replace all their light fixtures, but say 1 hour after closing, you can just say that you can only leave the motion censored lights on. So it'd still be a floodlight, but it's only set off if someone comes near the building. And there's currently a state bill that actually some of my colleagues we wrote some of the language for it and are advocating for it, passed the New Jersey Assembly unanimously, and it's being reviewed by some executive departments. I don't know if it's gonna pass at this point, but if not, we'll go to next year. You know, we're definitely just building support there. And having that coalition of like, you know, different environmental groups like the Sierra Club or Audubon, like really has more swaying power over our elected officials. So it's something that Massachusetts has a bill that's pending. A lot of states have been fighting to do this for a while. It's not easy, especially the Department of Transportation. If they're not educated about light pollution, they're like, why would we want to do anything different with our lighting? But it just takes that educational outreach and patience. Like I said, ongoing efforts, continuing to build coalitions, build paths. So our call to action, if you want to, this is something where I feel like everyone can make an impact in a way that other types of pollution are harder to clean up. Light pollution is flicking a switch or re-aiming our lights. So if you own property, you can change your outdoor light fixtures to dark sky friendly fixtures. Or, you know, if you don't have the money to do that yet, you can simply just turn your light off when you're not using it. Like our grandparents used to say to save energy. Spread the word to your neighbors and everyone you know. You could join. It was in Dark Sky New Jersey chapter, but also Dark Sky New York is reforming their chapter. So pretty exciting. And, you know, attend mayor and council meetings, just get involved, you know, and reach out to me if you have any questions. That about sums it up. Thank you. Questions? Yes.
So I have a question about street lamps.
Yes.
Can you compare the horizontal reach of a fully shielded street lamp to a conventional one? Like,
So,
would the fully shielded ones light as big an area? Because in an existing town, if you go
Yes.
to them and say, you should fully shield, they're gonna say, well, won't we have to put in more street lamps?
That's a
than we
great
have now?"
question. So with conventional lighting, like a high pressure sodium bulbs, they didn't have as much like horizontal. You couldn't aim the diodes diagonally as much as you can now because they weren't diodes. It was just one light source. So yes, in principle, when the bulb is more visible, like with those older high pressure sodium lights where the bulb is popping out, there is more of a horizontal throw to the light. So there is slightly better coverage in principle. But with newer LED lighting technology, you can actually make it so, even though it's fully cut off here, the diodes themselves are aimed more diagonally. You can more accurately aim the distribution to where you want it to go. So it breaks even basically. Like where you're getting more brighter light at a better angle, so that you know it still will not go above here, but you get as much illumination on the ground as possible. So, and you'll see that with a lot of the newer LED light fixtures on our streetlights are actually fully shielded. The problem is that they're a little bit too bright, but they do do better light coverage. Yes.
On pollution, could you see, are you limited in terms of viewing the aurora borealis?
Yes, you are. Yeah, you can see the aurora much better from a dark sky. It dramatically impacts it. Yes. Yes, go on. I'm sorry.
Is there work being done to control the brightness of headlights? Because
I should have brought that up. That's great.
insufferable.
Thank you. I want to
Yes.
ask that.
Yeah.
They're actually like working on like trying to pass something to make car companies be forced to make the headlights lighter, not as bright, because it's genuinely really, really bad.
Yes, he was saying that basically to address car headlights, because that's like a whole other issue. Municipalities can't do anything about that. States can't do anything. That's really you have to regulate the manufacturers. So that's actually where like the federal government can do something about it. Because actually like the FDA is actually required to, lighting, anything that affects human health or safety has to be regulated by the FDA. There are petitions going around some with like thousands of signatures to actually direct the, petitioning for the FDA to actually do something about it. So, yes, there needs to be more done at the federal level to address headlights, because that really, it's just too bright, yeah.
I mean, I just remember because I got the car that I'm driving now a few years ago, and I was like, all of a sudden I was like, what's going on here? I mean, I don't even like it, like, and I'm just driving the car, it's not even coming at me.
Yeah.
So I'm just saying, I didn't even understand why the technology changed, why they feel
Well,
like-
I mean, because the LEDs are much, like, you can produce way more lumens for much less electricity. But the problem is, I just don't think, I don't know, they're not thinking about the glare angle. They're just thinking about if you're driving on a rural road and there's no oncoming traffic, they're thinking about how far and how wide can the light spread be. And of course, with LED headlights, it's much better. The problem is there is such thing as oncoming traffic. so when you're getting blinded, it doesn't really make sense. Yes.
Yeah, there's two issues with car headlights. One of them, of course, is the color of the beam, and some of these newer car headlights.
5,000 Kelvin.
Yeah, they're really intense on the blue side of the spectrum. But aside from that, it's also a question of how you design the reflector and the director.
Yes.
And some of the ones that I've seen, they have a very sharp cutoff line. And so they may still have a bad color, but it doesn't glare right into the eyes of the oncoming traffic. It's more directed horizontally
Yes.
and downwards. And that at least is an improvement. So any legislation or any pressure on the car companies can address both of those issues.
Yes, you're right. The housing of the actual fixture, the reflectors, that all needs to be addressed. And there's some newer technology where, like, for instance, on the Subaru that my wife just got, like, the lights will actually, when you turn, the lights will actually turn a little bit with it. Just getting better aiming. Also in Europe, they have the matrix LEDs where it's like, when it senses oncoming traffic or pedestrian, it'll actually dim, like, parts of the actual light itself, like sensing in the direction of where the object is. So, but that technology has not been approved in the United States yet. But
Oh, there's one other thing that car manufacturers can do and are starting to do, which is the automatic brights, or actually automatic low beams. And so if I'm on a rural road, I'll have my high beams will go on automatically. As soon as it sees an oncoming car, it goes right back to low beams. And so
Yeah,
I'm not shining my headlights in their eyes.
For sure. The problem is
makes
a
a
lot of
big
the low
difference.
beams are also really bright, and especially the larger the vehicle. Like
Right, the higher they
Chevy
are.
Silverado, then you're still getting blinded by the low beams.
Yeah, my friend's Jeep, the low beams are already at the height where it blinds other
Yeah.
people. There's nothing to do about it. There's nothing you can fix.
Yeah, just need to have auto dimmers and other technology.
Yeah.
Yes.
I actually also just started driving a Subaru, and I've noticed that the high beams are actually quite lower than what I was driving before.
Yeah. So, there's something to be done. Yes.
One of the main issues with headlights is that because they're so bright, it not only impacts other drivers, but also impacts wildlife too. In fact, so much that some state environmental agencies started putting glowing marks on animals like deers to so incoming drivers can see them much better, like before they hit them.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, all this lighting is just definitely having an impact on our wildlife.
Yes.
Yes.
One other thing has a question, and then the other thing is, does daylight savings affect this at all?
So daylight savings basically, so when we switch, now we're in standard time. We switched from daylight saving time to standard time. So during daylight saving time, we're doing everything an hour earlier, essentially. So it would mean maybe we're like slightly less active at night, but after work, right? But now we've shifted everything an hour. We're doing everything an hour later. So yes, we're bringing more light is occurring at night after work. So yeah, we're pushing the lighting later on to the night. I don't know if there's studies that show like how the ecology is affected by this. That's a great idea for a research topic. Yes.
So I believe it was in Europe recently, I read an article, because of the dark sky, that actually that street lighting is not as predominant an effect on the
Yes,
cyclone, but really for signage, and how signage and how it's directed upwards
Yes.
is mainly a large contributor for the glow. How are we looking to address that?
You brought up a good point. There was a new study that came out that was really diving into like every different source of light in like a city, and like what are the biggest contributors to at least the sky glow. And it was determined that streetlights, especially because the newer LED streetlights have better cutoffs, like they're better shielded. They're not as much of a contributing factor as they used to be. Of course, there's still the blinding glare and stuff like that, but in terms of sky glow, streetlights are not contributing as much. The largest contributors, in addition to signage, which he said, is also mainly like building, like parking lot facade floodlights, like building floodlights. Sorry. So like on a building, instead of getting lighting poles, they just put the floodlights up like that on the facade. Those are the biggest contributor to light pollution now. And then what can we do about it? Actually, municipalities can they have signing ordinances. Like you can, ordinances for signage are like something that a planning board or a zoning board can implement in terms of having your signage off after a certain time, or having it be a certain level of brightness, or not having it blinking. So, these are things that municipalities can actually have big sway over. Yes, so back there, yeah.
This is more like a personal question, but like, what is your favorite thing to see in the night sky?
My favorite thing to see in the night sky, well, of course, just seeing the core of the Milky Way is pretty awesome. And my next favorite thing is being able to see Andromeda Galaxy with your naked eye, because you can see that from a dark sky. It looks like a little white smudge, but it's pretty amazing to actually be able to see that. It's the furthest object that we can see with the naked eye. It's 2.5 million light years away, so that's pretty cool. Yes. The lady back there, sorry.
Yeah, can you just summarize for us what that bill that's before the state legislature in New Jersey does? Because
Yes.
short of that being, I'm thinking there are 17 municipalities in Bergen County, and it just seems overwhelming for us to even make a dent unless we get that.
Well, yeah, we need it's a multi-pronged approach. We need the state legislation to set the tone for the state, and then municipalities can add on to that with stricter standards. But essentially, the state bill in New Jersey is that all new, like after the bill passes, all state-funded lighting projects after that have to incorporate dark sky principle. State-funded, so if there's state money going towards, so say they're redoing the lighting on the turnpike or something. I mean, that's a public-private thing, but all new state-funded projects have to have fully shielded light fixtures with a maximum color temperature of 2700 Kelvin. Yes, that's the state bill, basically.
So it still means it's up to us to get the municipalities.
Yeah, for municipalities, it's not going to, if you have private businesses, it's not going to do anything for private businesses, just state-funded things. Well, that includes correctional facilities, highway lighting, and other things, so. And it sets a precedent which can trickle down to counties and municipalities. Yes, back there.
I have 4 questions. My first question is on infrared. There's a picture of the man and the man in the fence. Does infrared expose figures? Will it expose the man more? And how does light affect infrared? And how does infrared affect light?
That's a great question. I don't know in terms of the camera sensor in infrared, but with the human eye, obviously we can't see infrared, so it might not make a huge difference in terms of its glare impact on humans. There actually, interestingly about infrared, there are some scientists claiming that the loss of infrared from our LED lighting, because LED doesn't produce like any infrared, it's solid state lighting, so it's producing just the color spectrum that we want. Losing that infrared, some people say there's some health consequences to not getting that. The infrared light exposure from incandescent bulbs, some people argue, might actually have some beneficial health aspects to us. Because it's because incandescent lighting is similar to the way the sun operates, right? It's producing all the colors of the spectrum, including infrared. So it's an interesting question. Yes.
Also, so light pollution, how does light pollution affect infrared? Also, melatonin and infrared, how does infrared affect melatonin levels? And eclipses, solar and lunar eclipses, how does infrared affect eclipses, and how does eclipses affect infrared?
I mean, these are all great questions. In terms of melatonin, I don't think there's any evidence that infrared has an impact on our melatonin levels. It's mostly the visible blue spectrum light that has the most impact on melatonin levels. And I should bring this up too, I didn't mention, like the reason why astronomers use red light on their observing fields is because our eyes are the least sensitive to red. It's not just, so for visual acuity, it allows us that your pupils can dilate more and you can see better at night without having to get rid of your night vision. But it's the same with our melatonin sensitive cells in our brain. Red light also. So if you want like some relaxing lighting in your house before bed, you can actually, I have my light bulbs turn red after 10 p.m. So.
So if you get some camping headlights, or headlamps, they will have the red setting?
Yes, there's, if you're using a headlight on, why am I forgetting? Yeah, headlamp, yes, a headlamp. They have headlamps where we can change the setting to red. There's some that you can get one that where it's only red, so you don't have to go through the white and the other colors to get to it. Yes, ideal for that. Yep.
How does artificial lighting affect our melatonin levels? Because I know you've mentioned it a couple times, but I'm just curious, like how big of a deal, like how concerned should I be about?
Well, so here's the thing. I should talk about confounding factors, right? So, first of all, a lot of things affect our circadian rhythms and our sleep. So, if you're drinking alcohol every night or popping shots of caffeine every night, that's going to have more of an impact on your sleep than the artificial light will. The essential findings of most of the research is that, for controlling say you don't drink every night, or you don't have caffeine, you're doing all of your other good sleep hygiene. That's where the effect of artificial light. It's kind of like that last thing that we haven't checked off in terms of having really good sleep hygiene. So, and the truth is that there's still no fully causal relationship between outdoor lighting and human health. Most of the research where there's a solid correlation is indoor lighting and human health. So just having your lights just blasting really bright at midnight is probably not ideal. And people say looking at your phones too close. But we do have, because of that American Medical Association study in 2016, that actually led Apple to push to do night mode on their screens, which you can do the red shift on your phones and computers too. So it's something that's definitely the medical literature is showing. Yes.
Yeah. So I've got a very local problem on our street. The edge of our property has one of those old-style Cobra head street lamps, and so it glares right in through our living room window. It's a direct horizontal light coming in.
Yes.
And across the street, we've got one of the new low cutoff fixtures, which would be wonderful. Now the question is, what rights do I have to talk to the town and say, this is light trespass, I want that light gone, replace it with a newer one?
So you can definitely go to your town and advocate for it. I guess ultimately it's up to the town. If you have more people, I guess the more people that go to your mayor and council meetings and advocate for a change, the better. But in terms of, I think usually what I've heard is when people go to their mayor and councils, you can either, they might actually, what they're gonna do is they might not replace the fixture right away, but they might paint some black paint on the side facing your house, things like that, or putting up some retrofitted shielding. That might be, so it's definitely worth a try to go and say this light is messing with my sleep, but can we do something about this?
Maybe I should just encourage that light to burn out, so I'll have to replace it.
Well, yeah, and I've heard people actually mention when their street light burns out, they're like, it's kind of nice, I can do some astronomy now. So, yeah.
Or a laser pointer.
I lived in Stony Point also, and I had the same problem. It was I would do astronomy from my driveway, and then they put up one of those lights that had the bulb hanging below. So what I did is I waited till the power company was going, the lighting company was going by, and I stopped them and I told them my problem, and they actually put a piece of black material inside the dome to block it from coming into my driveway. So they're willing to do that. They recognize the problem and they're willing to do it until they replace them all.
Yes. Yeah, there's a little bit of advocacy at the local level. Not a lot of people show up to mayor and council meetings. So if you actually just show up every day or every month, they will listen to you. Any other questions about that? And all these slides will be sent out, and my contact information, feel free to reach out whenever.
I also should say is that we're filming this tonight, and we're gonna edit it together with his slide deck, and we'll put it up on the website for Rocket Astronomy Club, and we're gonna begin a Dark Sky International page, because we're members of it, and so you'll be able to find all this information with links and URLs up on our website within the next month.
Yes, and included with these slides will be there's a thing called the Artificial Light at Night State of the Science Report. If you want to fact check anything I'm saying, I get most of my information from the vast amount of scientific literature that's in that report. I'll have that with them too. So it has 500 citations. Dark Sky International publishes this report every year. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you. Before everybody leaves, Vinny, do you want to say anything about our upcoming lecture?
Yes, our next lecture will be February the 20th. Gennaro Suarez will be here to do a presentation for us from the Flatiron Institute. But thank you very much for being here tonight. We look forward to seeing you in February.
I have a broad question about these lectures. Who organizes them and how do I find out about them?
Okay.
It's the Rockland Astronomy Club,
Yes.
and we publish a sheet of events for each year, and it's already up for, I think 2026 is coming up. We're going to put it up next month, so you can just look and you can see exactly when these lectures are.
We also publish a monthly newsletter called Distant Light, and generally for the next upcoming lecture, it will be mentioned there for the upcoming month. I'm sorry?
Light pollution. You know how much I hate leaf blowers and jets. Light pollution is my other bugaboo. Oh well.